What is going on, everybody? And today's going to be a little bit of a different video. And, it just amazes me so much. And it's so shocking how people on this website and the internet can act so tough, look tough, but in reality they kind of lack a spine. So, what am I talking about here? Okay. I woke up this morning and I flipped on my Twitter and I saw a tweet by the person named Solidrev. Now, I've seen some of his videos on YouTube, and I thought they were okay. And his tweets have gotten retweeted on my timeline before. And usually he says stuff that I kind of agree with, and it's not really that bad. But this tweet in particular irked me a bit. And the reason it irked me is because it's so full of ignorance, and usually when people talk about professional wrestling, a lot of people usually don't know what they're talking about. Especially people who are not hardcore followers of professional wrestling, and sometimes they can make ignorant statements. And the statement he made was really ignorant in my opinion. So, basically he said, if somebody like Daniel Bryan would have come near the ring 20 years ago, he would have been laughed out of the arena. Now, I know some of you who may be watching this will already see the ignorance, but I will explain why that's an ignorant statement. Now, see, the implication there is Daniel Bryan would have been laughed out of the arena was because he's a small guy. He's not a big, tough, muscled up guy that you normally see in wrestling. He's a small guy. So, according to Solidrev here, Daniel Bryan would have been laughed out of the arena because he's a small guy 20 years ago. Well, here's the problem with that. 20 years ago was 1995. And who was on top of the WWE in 1995? There were two main guys that were on top. Bret the Hitman Hart and Shawn Michaels. Two guys that were not big guys. And when they first debuted in professional wrestling, they were seen as small guys who would never, ever make it to the top. And they ended up proving all of those people wrong by making it to the top. And they were already on top 20 years ago in 1995. Now, see, the stigma with professional wrestling that when size really mattered was the 1980s. That is when, unless you were a big muscled up guy, unless you had, unbelievable charisma, you were never going to be a big time main eventer. But see, that was the 1980s. That was not 20 years ago, like Solidrev said. So I took issue with that. And I said to him, really, I think Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, just to name a few, would disprove that theory, as I just explained it. And his response to me was, I think you forget both of them guys had some size on them when they first entered the WWF. Now, as you all know, I just explained it to you that I did not forget that. I know when both those guys debuted in the WWE. Bret Hart debuted in 1984, and Shawn Michaels debuted, well, he first debuted in WWE in 1987, got fired the next day, and then came back in 1988 with his partner Marty Jannetty. They were known as the Rockers. So no, I didn't forget when those guys debuted and that their size was a disadvantage to them. At least when it comes to main eventing. But that wasn't my issue. My issue was that he said 20 years ago, which was 1995. I mean, I don't know if he just had a memory lapse on how to do math or something. I don't know. But that wasn't my point. He completely missed the point. So I responded, you said 20 years ago. Both of those guys were on top then. Even if we look at the 1980s, Macho Man was a top guy in the WWE, and that's a good point. Now, Macho Man Randy Savage might be an exception to the rule, because there weren't many other small guys that were on top in the WWE in the 80s. But the fact is that he overcame that and became a top guy. So his small size ended up not really his small size ended up not mattering much because of Macho Man's undeniable charisma and ring ability. So, he continues with, okay, so what point is it you were trying to make? You lost me, bro. I don't think what I said was that hard to understand. I don't know, maybe it was for him. I don't know. But, so I responded with, those guys were not laughed out of the arena, so I don't see how Daniel Bryan would have been, especially when he's over with the crowd, because Daniel Bryan, to me, is no different from people like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. All three are great technical wrestlers, and they have undeniable charisma, and they're over with the crowd. All three of those guys have that in common, so I don't see how Daniel Bryan would have been laughed out of a WWE arena in 1995. And if you go back and look at 1995 WWF, there's a lot of stupid freaking characters back then that are even more of a joke than today's wrestling. You had, Mantar, the Goon, Doink the Clown, the second variation of Doink the Clown. I could go on with all the stupid gimmicks that were in WWE in 1995. But Daniel Bryan would have been laughed out of the arena? Okay, whatever. And this guy also said that Daniel Bryan has zero wrestling ability and he just flies around the ring. Okay, if you don't think Daniel Bryan has any wrestling ability, you obviously haven't watched much wrestling, especially with Daniel Bryan. And I'm not even just counting WWE. Look at Daniel Bryan in Ring of Honor and the indie circuit before he even came to WWE. How do you think he even got hired in the WWE? It's because of his wrestling ability. He was hired just to be another great wrestler on the card. He was never initially hired to be a top guy. He eventually overcame that and is now a top guy today. But he was originally hired because of his, wait for it, wrestling ability. So, and I even pointed out some matches to him. I pointed out to him, look up Daniel Bryan versus CM Punk from Over the Limit 2012. And then there's Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus from Extreme Rules 2012. Both those matches are regarded as great technical matches. And that was just from that short period of time. There's many more that I don't really have all day to list. So, he ended up eventually saying, dude, I'm not going to sit here and have a type debate over this faggot. If you like that 70s hippie, fine. Doesn't surprise me. See, at this point, people usually do this when they don't have any more counterpoints, and now they're just going to throw insults out there. And, I could have sworn this was a grown-ass man. I could have sworn he was. Usually grown adults are not supposed to act like this. At least in my opinion. So I ended up saying, that's fine, because you really had no points in your argument. No, I like great technical wrestlers that entertain the crowd, and I do. I like great professional wrestlers that have good wrestling ability, but can also entertain the crowd as well. And I can also appreciate wrestlers who may not have that great in-ring ability, but as long as they have charisma and they're over the crowd, that's all fine by me. It's all about entertaining the crowd. Because they pay good money to be at these shows. And then he ends up saying, oh my god, because I'm not going to debate over a clown, get over it. And when people say that, it always baffles me. You originally made the statement. If you don't want people providing criticism to your statement, why even make the statement in the first place? Like, do you expect people not to criticize that statement? Because some people might have a problem with it, and I did. And now he's getting butthurt and mad because I do have a problem with it. And he's telling me to get over it. I'm not the one who's upset here. It seems like that this guy was clearly upset at this whole debate. And then I said, don't respond to me. Who's forcing you to respond to me? I'm not making you do it. I'm sorry that your points are flawed and ignorant. It's not really my fault. And that's what it is. If you make ignorant points and you have nothing to back them up with, you're going to get criticized, and that's pretty much it. If you can't handle that, don't make points like that. But then the funny thing is that this happened. He ended up blocking me. Oh my god. Now, I just showed you the whole conversation. And I will put my Twitter in the link to the description, so you can go check out my Twitter for yourself. I don't delete tweets, and nothing here is edited. So can someone point out to me what I said that would warrant a block? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that nobody should ever block anybody. I mean, I can understand if you're going to block somebody who's making a sexist comment, a racist comment, or someone who's spamming you over and over again, like with 50, 40 tweets, as an example. I don't think I fall under those categories. So I don't see what I would have done to warrant a block. But it's just amazing to me how a guy who, looking at his profile picture, he looks like a tough guy. You know, he's got his muscles, his tight shirt. He's a real tough guy. And he can also make YouTube videos basically getting on his soapbox and making his points and acting very confident. But then you end up having situations like this where you just block somebody over just a little meaningless discussion. So, you know, I just thought this was all amusing, and I thought some of you guys would get a kick out of this. So, alright, that's about it. Just let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you all later. Have a good one.